You're listening to Shawna Renee on Urban View Mornings.
Welcome back to Urban View Mornings. I'm Shawna Renee. It is now 28 minutes before the top of the hour. All right, we're going to shift gears a bit, turn our attention to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Pulling up a seat to the table, Mara Kronenfeld, who is the executive director of the UNRWA USA. It's a nonprofit that supports the work of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine. In her role, she leads the strategic visions, operations, and fundraising efforts for the organization. Mara has well over 20 years of experience in international development. She's a Fulbright scholar as well as an expert in designing, implementing, and leading public-private partnerships supporting youth development programming in the Middle East as well as North Africa. First of all, Mara, good morning, and thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you so much, Shawna, for having me today.
My pleasure. So, unfortunately, this morning we woke up to news that Israeli forces launched a strike on Palestine. 15 people were killed, including a number of journalists, paramedics. The attack targeted a hospital building. Then it hit rescuers, drawing some widespread outrage, continuing outrage, and accusations of war crimes. It's just this is so sad, and it's pure insanity. And I know that you all have been working really hard, despite all of this, to ensure that adequate aid or whatever you can get to the people who need it, are able to do it. So talk to us a little bit about what is actually going on now, given what just happened. What's going on now on the ground? What's happening? What do we need to be aware of?
Thank you so much. And again, it's so important to be able to shed light on, as you said, what's actually going on. The media presents some of the story, not always all of it. And we're so grateful for you and others like you who want to hear from organizations like ours. The situation you just described, unfortunately, is almost every day there is a major attack, bombs, airstrikes on Gaza, and right now the focus is on the invasion of Gaza City that holds some 760,000 people, and the UN has also declared at the same time famine in this area of Gaza. So we have upwards of 500,000 people facing famine. This is something the UN and our partners have been warning about for months, if not a year, unless there was enough humanitarian aid intervention, and there just hasn't been. And why hasn't there been enough aid coming in? Because Israel essentially closed the border to aid for about 3 months. That is what led to these famine conditions. And right now they're letting a trickle of aid in. But for example, UNRWA, the organization I work with, has over 6,000 trucks worth of emergency food aid, medical aid, and other hygiene supplies. And Israel is not letting that aid in. A little bit of it is going through partners, but there needs to be 500 to 600 trucks a day just to deal with the humanitarian conditions on the ground, let alone having any sort of commercial goods available for purchase. But right now, Shawna, it's beyond the pale. We're talking about a population of just over 2 million people who are being basically pushed off of the land that they've lived in for their whole lives. Their parents have lived in, their grandparents, and Israel right now is trying to concentrate the population in the south of Gaza, right near Egypt. And unfortunately, this far right extremist government in Israel said the quiet part out loud. They've said, Our goal is to push everyone to the south, make them so hungry, so terrified, make their lives so miserable that they'll either want to leave or we force them to leave. And that is ethnic cleansing, that is population displacement, that is yet another war crime, as you described. It's been unbearable to watch this day in and day out as a human being, as a mother, as it's unbearable.
What I find unbearable and shocking is just what you said, is that it's almost like Israelis, because one of the questions I was actually going to ask you before you said that is, well, why is Israel not allowing this aid to come in? Are they saying we can do it? Are they saying we don't care? But it sounds to me they're clearly saying we are trying to intentionally starve these people, even though it appears from some of the things that I've read that they claim that they will take over these efforts.
Yeah. I mean, that's what's so diabolical and almost like just unimaginable in this day and age, that actually the government is saying explicitly what it wants to do, because this government is so extreme. They're literally saying, they're describing, we want to starve everybody there. We want to make their life miserable. We want to deprive them of food, water, give them a pita bread. That's all we'll give them. That has been, like, quote unquote, from the Minister of Finance, Smotrich, out of Israel. Population displacement has literally been discussed. So when they're saying what they want to do, we're taking them at their word. At the same time, they're speaking out of the other side of their mouth, and they're saying we're giving humanitarian aid. Now, I certainly, common sense makes me think, probably most of the listeners today, that the same government that is causing famine, that it has killed over 62,000 individuals, and the number is probably much, much, much higher because of those people just incinerated into dust upon impact or buried under the rubble. This same government saying, hey, we're going to feed you too. And they're doing that through the so-called Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. Except, if I can lay it out for the listeners and the viewers, this GHF, it's run by Israel and the United States. Our own government is implicit, is part of this, is complicit in this. They are taking, as I said, the population, they're centering food in the south of Gaza, right near the Egyptian border, and they're causing people to walk 9 to 12 kilometers to get there. When they get there, they have to wait in caged fences, crowded in like animals. And then there's a moment where they say go. And if you can imagine, these people who've been facing 22 months of a horrific siege are starving, beleaguered, are running out to get food that's thrown at them. I mean, you would not, if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes through video, I would not have believed it. This is like a real life Squid Games. They're running out to get the food. Some of them, we had heard, were carrying weapons to try to fight off other people because they're so desperate. And then on top of all that, we have explicit direct testimony from former 25-year Army veteran Anthony Aguiar, who has stated he has seen then the Israeli Defense Forces, the Israeli military, as well as GHF, American former military contractors shoot at starving people. So there are accounts that there are over 1,400 deaths, killings at these so-called aid sites, up to 1,900 deaths. And this is something, if I beg anybody listening to go see Anthony Aguiar's testimony, 25-year military veteran, Green Beret, said he saw it with his own eyes. He videotaped this. It is something we could never imagine seeing playing out on TV and led by a government who says that they're feeding people. It's just utter lies.
So what is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency? So let's talk about the agency first, and then we'll talk about Mara second. What is being asked then of the United States government? Because you mentioned, and it has been said by plenty of people, that the government is complicit in a sense here. So what are you asking?
Yeah, so the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees is a 76-year-old organization. It was established by the United Nations after Israel was declared a state, and then that led to the forcible displacement of some 760,000 Palestinian refugees. And so when those refugees were displaced, they have had no government since then, despite efforts toward a political solution. organization. So unfortunately, with no government, they've been dependent on the world community for their much of their food, their education, their healthcare. So in Gaza, this organization, UNRWA, that we work with, essentially was the Ministry of Health, the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Civic Works for decades in Gaza. And over the last 18 years, when Hamas was elected, UNRWA was a quasi-governmental organization in parallel to the government. And UNRWA staffed in Gaza by 12 to 13,000 individuals. These are Palestinians who've worked for UNRWA, who are experts in provision of aid. And so UNRWA, before Israel tried to outlaw UNRWA had 400 aid sites. So instead of the 3 or 4 we see from Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, they were doing aid with the dignity of the beneficiaries in mind, bringing the aid directly to the people, and including those really the most vulnerable of the population, widows, and there are so many widows, unfortunately, orphans. There are some 40,000 children who their both parents have been killed or one parent have been killed in these atrocities, and so UNRWA is right now, when Israel is not letting a lot of UNRWA trucks in. UNRWA, these staff are on the ground. They're the primary providers of medical aid, because unfortunately Israel has basically systematically decimated the hospital system there. UNRWA is providing the medical aid, trauma care for children. They're providing food aid when they can. They're cleaning up all of the toxic waste that is built up over the last 2 years. And they are fixing the water wells because there's not only a famine, there's a forced drought. The military is controlling much of the water sources in Gaza right now. So UNRWA is trying to do their best under these circumstances. The U.S. government stopped funding UNRWA, paused under Biden, and then basically stopped all funding to UNRWA under Trump. But the American people have stepped up. So that's where we come in as UNRWA USA. We bring in donations from over 170,000 Americans this year, and American people have stepped up where our government has stepped down and provided $68 million in aid to Gaza, to emergency relief there. And so I know the American people know where it's at, and they've been doing an amazing job when our government has lost its moral footing.
Now, you say that what the Israeli forces are trying to do is push everyone to the south, making it very difficult for your organization to get in. So what are you doing then? How are you coming in then from the south? Are there other ways? What's the strategy? I don't want you to give away too much because I know this is a pretty precarious situation, but what's the strategy now?
Yeah, so unfortunately right now Israel has blocked the ability of UNRWA to get aid in, if you could believe it. So they've got these equivalent of 6,000 trucks just beyond the border, and Israel controls that border, and they decide what goes in, even though they occupy Gaza. So the people of Gaza have no control over what goes in, and frankly, they haven't for 17 years. Israel controlled the whole border, land, sea, and air, and so other UN agencies are getting some aid in. But it really is a trickle. We don't know how many trucks anymore. We used to know exactly how many trucks because Israel controls the border and has not given any sort of transparency about how many trucks are going in. But we know it is a trickle because every day we see, and our colleagues see, these 12,000 colleagues on the ground, see people starving, children starving, skin on bone. We hear of families burning their last clothes to be able to heat up lentils. We hear of parents waking up in the morning, if you can imagine this, and deciding, am I going to die by airstrike, or am I going to try to get food from these so-called aid sites and then get shot at trying to get food? Or am I going to die by hunger? It is an unbearable situation. Every single day in my inbox, Shawna, I get notes, personal notes from I've probably gotten hundreds of notes from families saying, "You care, you're a caring person, Mara, please save my family. My children are dying in front of me." I mean, it's just unbearable, and it's unbelievable that this day and age, when we have so much footage of what's actually going on in the ground, people can just lie and deny it. And so, I feel it's part of my duty to tell the truth, and to try to get as much aid to the people, to the civilians, to these innocent people, as much as I can.
So, Mara, I just read a story, I think it was in the New York Times over the weekend, that it looks like the Israeli forces are now focusing or shifting their focus on the West Bank. Have you heard anything about that? And does it look like there's some potential for major issues there as well?
Yeah, there are ongoing incursions. I think people right now, rightly so, are focusing on Gaza, but in the West Bank, the Israeli military is going into Gaza. There have been different settings where they've taken over cities like Jenin, forced people out. They are trying to take away or try to undermine the work of UNRWA, which again has provided food and education and healthcare for 75 years, the longest single food operation anywhere on the planet. And Israel, the government has actually said, we are going to annex, i.e., take over the West Bank. It is shocking that this government in Israel right now, which is extremist, has been able to get away with so much that would have been untenable before. The U.S. has again stepped down from its moral duty, from its duty to try to work toward peace and a political solution, and has let the most extremist, racist people wreak havoc on a whole population, essentially trying to get rid of Palestinians, whether through killing them or denying them any hope or any possibility of a future sovereign state. Unfortunately, that's what they've said out loud, and that's what they're doing.
So you mentioned earlier that unfortunately the government is making it incredibly difficult for you, but you are relying upon the American people to believe the truth, believe the people who are on the ground about what is happening, and to support your work. So before I let you go, talk to us a little bit about how we, the average everyday American, who with means, with a little bit of something, can help support the work of UNRWA.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. I think it's like to continue to find your news in multiple places. I think that in the last couple of weeks, the mainstream media, my colleagues and I have done interviews on CNN, ABC. They're starting to talk about really how awful, how truly awful the situation is, and talking about the weaponized starvation. But the media is not always telling the whole story. So grateful for you all and other places, independent media, which really tell much more of the story. A lot of the images we get are through our social media from colleagues on the ground. So one thing is just paying attention, being critical viewers and listeners of media, and then yes, absolutely, we have donors from all over the country, from every state, from every background, from every religion. I mean, I happen to myself to be Jewish, and my grandfather escaped Nazi Germany. His sister's family was murdered there, and he said never again for anybody. And so I do this work because I don't believe one religion or group of people, ethnicity or race is better than any other, and it is our duty to protect the most vulnerable among us at every moment. And so just I always think, what if those were my grandparents in Gaza? What if those were my aunt and uncle? What if that was my child? They're no different, no better, no worse, no different than us. And so and there's a lot of horrible things going around the world. I think why we need to focus on this is that our taxpayer money is going to pay for those bombs and those missiles and that military equipment that Israel is using right now. We have blood on our hands, all of us, and we have a duty to be aware of where our taxpayer money is going and how many innocent people are dying because of it. So definitely welcome anybody to come donate at UNRWAUSA.org/donate. And we have lots of events. Despite these sad stories I'm telling you, we have a group of 10, 12 people who always are trying to find the positive in the world. And we have a Gaza 5K that we run with a family event. We had one in DC recently. We had 2,000 people there. We're going to New York City on October 12th. We have 4,000 people, hopefully, in Prospect Park. So we invite anybody and everybody who wants to have a moment of solidarity and feeling comfort around people who see what you see and understand that we're all equal, that we all need an equal chance at life. We invite everybody to join us at Gaza5k.org.
Gaza5k.org. And you mentioned social media, and I think it is important to remember and that social media is such a valuable tool, especially because it is the only way in some instances that people on the ground can get word out to other folks around the world about what's going on. So does your organization have a social media handle that people can follow? Are there other social media handles that you recommend people keep an eye on?
Yeah, and I think it's especially important in Gaza right now. You're so right, because the other thing I didn't even mention is Israel has denied all foreign journalists entry into Gaza. And meanwhile, they've been targeting and killing Palestinian journalists. Many people who we know have been killed, many people. So please follow UNRWA USA. We are on Instagram. We are on LinkedIn, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Go to our YouTube site. Actually, right now at UNRWA USA's YouTube, please subscribe, and you'll see many different videos, interviews, and many firsthand accounts of what's going on in Gaza, as well as those of our donors, again, from every background, from every religion, from every state in this beautiful country, supporting why they support this important cause. Mm-hmm. So yes, please go to UNRWA USA on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube, and you'll see our whole crew doing what we love, and really what feels like our mission and labor of love in life is to do this work.
And that's UNRWA USA. Just want to make sure that people know how to spell UNRWA. All right, Mara Kronenfeld, thank you so much for being here with us this morning. Listen, I see it in your eyes, and I know this is a passion of yours, and I understand that sense of helplessness, that we all feel. If you've seen it, I understand it. And so, I'm always sending lots of love and light out to people who are doing the good work. And so I send it out to you. And, we are here. The platform is here. So please do not hesitate to reach out to us anytime you need to get the word out. Thank you so much, Mara.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm so appreciative.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
All right. Take care of yourselves.